talk of winter online practice period of Ingenji Temple. Because I am the first to giving Way-Seeking Mind talk, I will give a little introduction what it is. As I was told in Zen Center, Way-Seeking Mind is like a little Dharma talk that in our tradition everyone have an opportunity to give. And I suggest you to use this opportunity, because your next Dharma talk is usually after Dharma transmission, and it can take time. So when I prepared this Dharma talk, I made notes, and at some point I thought, what I'm doing, I'm going to tell stories to Irish people. But then I realized that a good storyteller can use a good story. And Way-Seeking Mind usually is about our way to Zen, our way to practice. And this story is really good. And I can say that this story is a legend, and it is a legend not because to make it like greater than other things, but because many people tell stories about me, about my life. They make up these stories. So, and at some point I find I can nothing to do with this. It is what it is. I had stories about my life on different television of different countries, in newspapers, in magazines. And this is because I was the first to open the way of computer studies as a spiritual way. And I know that for many people who, and another part of my life is establishing Zen practice in Moscow, helping Russian practitioners to organize their Zen practice and their Zen understanding, and came to realization. And I understand that maybe Russia is just another country for many of you, and maybe computer way, the way of study computers, is just another way, like many of these. So I will try to make this Way-Seeking Mind talk to show this connection between Zen and so-called Zen arts, and how it is working on this example, on the example of computer hacking. And this may help you to understand deeper tradition, our tradition, and how it works. And from what I studied, this started from our Buddha ancestor Nagarjuna in India, that before Nagarjuna, Buddha way is exactly the way that historical Buddha taught. And at Nagarjuna time, Buddha teaching became so popular and people so reliable, so respected, that Nagarjuna turned the things around and told that each true teaching is Buddha teaching. Not that Buddha teaching, the words of original Buddha, was true, but every true teaching is Buddha teaching. And this twist, this religious twist, helped to give a big umbrella for many wonderful teaching existing in India. Okay. So I was born in 1973 in Moscow, and it was totally different country. It was country not united not by some religion, but it was country based on atheists, on non-believers. And I made the way from that zero point, zero ground, to Zen tradition. I was born at December 9. This is the day after Buddha enlightenment that we will celebrate at 8th of December. And like Buddha, I have two mothers. And one is my biological mother, and another was her university classmate. She was stepping in after divorce with my father, so she helped to raise me. And both of them were one of the first Russian programmers. So they deal with computers in 70s, when not so many people were aware of what computers are. And I was surrounded by punch cards and listings of computer programs. And my first computer language was Fortran, the first computer language. So that was one part. Many parts of my life, I felt that they come to one point when I first entered Zen Center. So this first part of my life is my passion for computers. Another part of my life was martial arts that I started to learn from Aikido. And when I first said Zazen on the cushion, I wanted to puff up, to make myself feel more important in Zen. And I added the time I practiced Aikido to my Zen training. Like I was practicing Zen even before coming to Zen. So deep was my faith in this connection between martial arts and Zen. The third part of my life was hippie life. When as teenager, I left home, left my family, traveled, hitchhiked a lot. And on this wild adventuring, I met many wonderful people in my country, in Russia, in countries in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Lithuania, Estonia, in many countries that are around my place. And I felt that in my part of the world, the same as Europe, the same as Ireland, as United States, as China, as Japan, there are many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that live without any tradition supporting of them, caring about them, and helping to flourish, to share teachings that they have. But there are wonderful people around, everywhere. And one of my motivation in Zen practice is to build this backbone, this tradition that will help those people to realize themselves, for their teachings, for their understanding, to flourish and help everyone. And there was always Zen around, through movies, through rumors. Somehow, my parents knew that in Japanese Zen, monks can be married. And this was knowledge that I had from my early days. And when I came to Zen Center in California, I found out that this is the place where hippies lived in 60s. This is the place where I met people who practice martial arts. The place where Silicon Valley is near. So many aspects of my life, they came into Zen. It was like I was going closer and closer from different directions into the same place. So given this early knowledge by this happy birth that computers exist, I explore this. I started to interesting in computer languages, into computer architecture. And it was when computers were not influenced our life that much. Now we have this way-seeking mind through internet with the use of different kinds of computers around the world. But at that time, all people were in their own fields. It was like the sandbox that I explored in my childhood and in adult years. It became like the top of the Mount Everest. And things that we did in our computer class became important. So the secret of why I studied computers, why I became excellent in computers in my teenager time, is what that I invested everything into computer studies. I invested all my time. I invested all my effort, all money. I buy books that were not so many books in Soviet Union about computers. So I bought them as they come. I looked into advertising, what books will be published. And early at the morning, I lived near the best bookstore in Moscow. I went to this bookstore and there was a little line waiting for this bookstore to be opened. So at the day when the book was openly going to the bookshelves, we came and we got those first publications to study. At evenings, when as teenager and schoolboy, I went to sleep, I had a flashlight. So I turn it and study those books under the blanket. When I was in public transport, I also opened and studied books about computers, about computer languages, about computers that I never touched, that I seen only on pictures. It was 80s and Soviet Union. My mother had access to computers, and there were big machines that occupy several rooms, and there were special people to handle those mainframes. But it was all under Soviet secrecy. So only many years after, my mother was able to take me to her job, so I can see the special device that makes holes in the punch cards to enter a program my mother wrote to the computer. When I grew up, I went to the hobby clubs. in Russia, we had very good, in Soviet Union, we had very good education for children. There was government program to care about children. And there were places where Japanese computers were available to people. There were MSX standard, maybe someone heard about them, by the company named Yamaha. The Soviet Union bought many computer classes of those with those computers. And it was a miracle for a person, for a boy to enter this class computer, to enter this hobby club, because many boys wanted to study, to play on computers, to study computer languages. And my passion for studying computers was so high that I was in this class. And after some years, I managed to go into several classes and go as much computer time as I can. And I have seen this passion later in Tasahara, in Zen monastery, in people who are really hungry for Zazen, who go into Zazen late night, who stay all night in Zen. And I had this passion with computers, this strong connection. And people who had this passion for computers in Moscow, we knew each other, and we shared places where computers were available to children. So we went to those places and we share our knowledge, what we learned about computers. And at some point, when political changes came into Moscow, and borders were opened, and we can sell things and buy things, and foreign computers, American computers came to our country. I went to the street, to the market of radio electronics, and I put all my most favorite, most expensive books about computers on the ground, and I sold them, and I bought a real computer on those money. It was one of those spiritual things in my life, strong decisions, because I was very addicted to those books. They opened the way to me. I studied them so hard, but I wanted the real thing, to be in this interaction with computers, to study it on my practice, that I already had in the Pioneer Palace, in the hobby clubs, but now I had it on my own, and I practiced, and I wrote computer programs, I studied other computer programs, I studied languages all night. I was young adult. There was no need to hide under the blanket. So I stayed. Then it was time before internet. FidoNet network came to Russia. And I was first of the pioneers who used modems to connect among phone lines, one to each other. And we write electronic, it was called netmail, that is now called emails on that technology of 80s. So there are many hunting stories that I can tell. I can tell when computer viruses appears, and at first I was skeptical because viruses were some from biological life, but then I hunted and caught some viruses, and I disassembled their code and I studied them, and I realized that they can exist on computers, and it was really big revelation. And then someone made first computer virus for Yamaha computer, this Japanese computer. That was my first, that I had strong feelings. And I was very disappointed that the first virus wasn't mine. So I wrote virus of my own. I wrote 2 of them, and I shared this virus and antivirus with people. So people around me, they had this choice what to use. And it was before computer law was established in Russia. So nobody paid attention to our computer underground. Big guys on the top of Russia, they had their own problems with political changes, with all those. Now it's much more sophisticated. Situation is much more sophisticated. So that was one part. And when I studied this Japanese computer, I felt how beautiful this computer code was. I disassembled, I looked how it was constructed. I looked into what is called firmware, internal software of this computer, how operation system was constructed, and it was beautiful. And I really admire Japanese programmers. And it was this border between American technologies and Japanese technologies. And I understand that this connection was through Zen. Zen influenced a lot technological development of Japan, and influenced in a good way. So that's one part of my life. Another part of my life that was connected with martial arts, that I never graduated, never received black belt in what I studied. But I felt that something like this can be in computer hacking. I felt this good atmosphere in dojo, where people practice martial arts, and these exercises that were made by masters of the past and are helping young students to achieve masterhood in different martial arts. I felt that it can be in computer world as well. And when I study logical operations and number systems, I felt that something missing, something should be here. And after I founded what I named at that time the School of Computer Hacking, I made these exercises, filled this missing place, made these forms. For example, if we have number 12, we can convert it into hexadecimal system, it is C. Then into binary, it is 1100. Then to octal, 14, and then back to 12. And this is very like katas in karate do. When you make series of exercises, you make it and you go to the same point where you started. So at early times, martial arts were my inspiration. But when I learned martial arts a little bit and learned masters of martial arts, communicated with them, I realized that Zen is behind all of this. So although I never was master of martial arts, I was allowed to show some exercises to students. And once in a hippie camp near the Black Sea, some hippies that I felt that giving them some self-defense practicing is important, because hippies were attacked by different people. They asked, we know you as a good computer hacker, so teach us computer hacking. And that was the point that I realized that someone should do this thing. Someone should establish this educational system. And it was 1996, and I was the first who established this system. At the first, I made color bracelets. I made color bells from martial arts and made color bracelets for computer hackers. And I went into Zen, the closest Zen available to Moscow. It was Korean Rinzai lineage, Kwanum. And there I learned what is Zen retreat, very like we will have on the next week. Sejiki retreat. And I make slightly difference. I allow to use computers during Zazen. So I made this form like this exercise going from 12 to 12 through different number systems and returning to the same point. I made what I call hacking runs. When people go together and practice computer hacking for many hours a day and live maybe not exactly a monastic life, but close to monastic life. Now, in this sphere, I involve, when I went deeper into Zen, I introduced a class of computer hacking and practice period of computer hacking. So, returning to this Zen thread of my life, after practicing Korean Rinzai, I felt that it is slightly different from what I heard about Zen from my childhood and what I expected. And this difference between accumulated, and I felt in my heart that it is good, but it is not exactly what I'm searching for. And then I found writings of Dogen, and two parts of Dogen teaching had really life-changing experience on me. I remember when I first took Russian translation of Dogen, opened it, and it was written that Bodhidharma was the first who brought the teaching of true clothing into China. And it impressed me. I closed it and I had to digest what I read. That what Bodhidharma brought to China wasn't just a clothing, it was a teaching of clothing. A point where teaching and clothing comes together. Another part of Dogen teaching influenced me even more. It was the strongest, or one of the strongest spiritual experience that I had in my life when I read it, because many parts of me that were developed before by computer studies, by this analytical thinking, my Zen practice that I already had at that time, they came together, and from different parts they linked to each other. It is the fifth question from Bendova. I will read it. Maybe you will feel what I feel there, or it will help to understand what I felt. There was the question why we call our teaching Zen, because Zen is, literal translation is meditation or dhyana, like one of many things in Buddhism, but our teaching is called Zen. And this is what Dogen answered. The meaning of this teaching has been made clear through the discourses of our ancestors. Do not identify Zazen with the dhyana or samadhi of the 6 practices or the 3 learnings. The authenticity of this transmission of this Buddha Dharma is unhidden through all time. Long ago at the assembly on the Vulture Peak, the Tathagata entrusted Venerable Mahakashyapa alone with the unsurpassable great teaching, the treasury of the true Dharma eye, the wondrous heart of Nirvana. This event was witnessed by devas in the heavenly world. Do not doubt it. The Buddha Dharma is protected by these devas, and its merits does not decrease. Know that the practice of zazen is the complete path of Buddha Dharma, and nothing can be compared with it. So what impressed me most in this, that Dogen said, do not doubt it. This is what I tell, and do not doubt it. And this is something very unexpected for my analytical mind. Because for me, it was like, we must do some tricks, some long mathematical approval, so that people will come to the conclusion that this is true and to stop these doubts. But Dogen came from the other side. He just said, do not doubt it. And it was honestly something that understanding from the different side, more from emotional side, more from non-analytical approach. So then I found that if Dogen wrote about the Zen that I'm searching for, maybe I should look how this book came to me. And there I saw copyright by San Francisco Zen Center. So I Googled what is San Francisco Zen Center. And I visited when I went to meet my students. And at that time, I returned back to the palace, to the place where I studied, where these Japanese computers as a teenager. I came as a teacher, and I had students of my own in the same palace. And there were new computers, American computers from IBM, connected to the internet. So I Googled San Francisco Zen Center. They were connected to internet. And I visited the website of San Francisco Zen Center all the time. And then I got email where Americans were interested in my School of Computer Hacking. And they invited me to Las Vegas to speak about hacking education. And I said, yes, I will go to you, Las Vegas, and I will present my school, but please pay my ticket to San Francisco. And they said, okay. And that's how I climbed the steps of the Zen Center. And it was like returning home, like the search for tradition, going from different sides, going at different distances to this center of Zen, that it was completed. And there I find Zafu, I find the same Zazen, but it was Zazen with my Dharma brothers and sisters. And there I met three beautiful Zen teachers. I met many beautiful Zen teachers, but I will mention here Jordan Thorne, that I was ordained with in 2010. I met the Ingen that we're practicing with Ingen now. I practiced after Jordan passed away in 2018. I met Michael Wenger, beautiful Zen priest, and many, many others. I met the Buddha family, and it's great. With Jordan, after my ordination in Moscow, before my ordination, we studied through internet like we do now with Ingen, just because it was distance between Moscow and San Francisco. And he taught me about precepts. And then Jordan came to Moscow, and we had Jukai in Moscow. And I got my Rakusu, and then I went and made practice period in city center, then made practice period in the Sahara. And after Jordan passed away, I made practice period with Indian COVID practice period through internet with you. And now we're in the beginning of the winter online practice period. So many journalists came to me and many people talk about my way, the way of computer hacking. And many people don't really consider listening to me. They just have their own ideas of what computer hacking is and what is to be a teacher of computer hacking, what is the school of computer hacking. And they tell about this and they use my name into their own stories. And I don't think that it's possible to influence all of this. But now when Irish people learned from the first hands what's really happened, now I have more trust and hope in more beautiful and authentic stories. But how they will evolve in generations. We have beautiful figures of bodhisattvas of the past, and there are bodhisattvas of compassion, of wisdom, of precepts, and maybe there is a place for bodhisattva of computer hacking, and it is not very much connected with me because human imagination makes wonderful things and beautiful things, and each story that each legend that we tell, they more reflect a person who tell this legend, not the legend itself. But it cannot be this side of Zen before computers were invented. Although I can speak of this of computers before computers, and how all these Zen rituals, beautiful Zen rituals that we study and teachers use to pass the teaching into other generation, how they resemble computer programs of today, and they were executed in monasteries by human imitating, going through these rituals, through these programs, even before computers were invented. There are lots of things, lots of stories, but what is wonderful is how when you truly believe that you have something important, that you have this teaching, and this teaching is Buddha teaching, how Zen is unfold to you from this side. When you practice and you learn something about what you have, you learn something about yourself. And it doesn't matter, is it about computer programming, or is it about music, or is it about writing beautiful novels? But you know that this is Buddha teaching, this is treasure, this is Dharma that you have, and you know how to unfold this Dharma, how valuable it is, how to practice it without harming other people, but with helping other people, and how to pass it to the new generation in a noble way. Thank you so much for listening.